Hello and welcome to Scotrock, our brand new podcast by ClimbScotland, bringing you climbing stories and mountain tales from Scottish underdogs and local heroes.
Your hosts are the legendary, me, Calum and...
me, Robert Mackenzie. Calum, what is the plan, bud?
Well, we both love interview podcasts, and for our jobs we get to travel around and speak to loads of different climbers. So we thought we would combine both of these things and share the stories we hear through this podcast.
That's right, we're not just interviewing the hardcore among you, but literally anyone that we think has a cool story to tell. And we know that there's a lot of you out there.
So keep an eye out every fortnight for the latest climber chat. And if you have anyone you'd like to hear from, or if you want to be in the show yourself, let us know and spread the Scotrock word.
And remember guys, when you get back out there climbing, back to the crags, back to the walls, be safe and do your buddy checks. Enjoy the podcast.
Today we are here with Robert Mackenzie. Now, these interviews between me and Robert, I suppose, are only ever so slightly less cringeworthy than doing a podcast and interviewing yourself.
Almost.
Like, maybe we're like just a tiny step away from being as cringy as that. But let's face it, COVID has probably done stranger things to people than this.
Yes, yeah.
So, today I will be interviewing good old Robert Mackenzie. How would I describe Robert?
Here we go.
Everyone's always interested in their description, aren't they? But I suppose I mainly know you, or the main thing I know you for is probably all the stuff you've done around Glasgow with kids and climbing. So, at your time at GCC through the youth squad, and also through the club you run currently, the Glasgow Gorillas.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of big aspect of your life that I would always kind of think about is your kind of history of being a competition climber, particularly being from like the north of Scotland and representing GB at like a really high level.
It's my only claim to fame.
Yeah. So I think that's the main two things I always think of when I think Robert Mackenzie. But is there anything you want to add to that, or?
Not at the moment. I'm sure we'll probably get into some things during the interview. I don't want to start answering questions already. Also, I don't want to sit here and just big myself up.
Oh, no.
Give myself a massive ego before we start, make everybody switch off.
Well, I'm going to totally shut you down in this interview, so...
No. Excellent. Excellent.
But anyway, so before we delve into all these like really important questions in this podcast, I think, to be honest, there's one question that's going to hit at the core of what we're going to talk about, and I'm just going to go straight in with this question.
Oh, here we go.
But I want to paint a bit of a picture, like paint the scene first for the question.
Okay.
So we were wrong about COVID. Infection does not lead to immunity. Infection leads to the second wave, which incurs the zombie apocalypse.
Oofed.
Robert has managed to escape the concrete jungle that is Glasgow, which is now infested by the living dead. But you now must pick a team of 3 well-known climbers to be part of your zombie hunting team. Who would you pick and why?
Ooh. And I get full choice of any climber, period, or any Scottish climber.
Any reasonably well-known climber.
Reasonably well-known climber. Alive and dead?
Could be alive and dead, yeah.
Alive and dead. Ooh. Oh, wow, that's a really hard question. You should have given me some prior warning on this question. I need to put some thought in. Here. Okay, I'm going to say... I'm going to say Mick Tighe.
Oh, okay.
Mick Tighe.
Yeah.
Banter points.
Yeah.
Ex-military. Knows how to protect himself and the team. and a old school mountain rescue member knows how to keep everybody safe at all times. I reckon he's a good shout.
Yeah.
I reckon with Mick Ty around, I can have literally anybody else, and it doesn't really matter because Mick's got our back for everything.
The remainder of your choices are just like fillers.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, we're gonna really offend whoever you say now.
Ooh, right, okay. Yeah, Mick Ty. Oh, right. I apologise for how awfully cringy this is, but it will be. Oh no, I can't. No. Oh God, you've really got me with this one. Right, I'm gonna put you on my team just so you don't feel left out.
Oh,
I'm gonna put you on my team just so you don't feel left out. Let's say. Oh, I'll take Robbie Phillips.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll take Robbie Phillips.
What's the so you've got to give a why for me and Robbie Phillips though? Am I just
Yeah,
so I don't feel left out?
Yours is just so you don't feel left out. Robbie, so I've got Mick for the protection and the know-how side.
Yeah.
Robbie will climb us up anything we point him at. So if zombies are coming and there's a massive 8C head wall above us, I'm pretty sure that in a pressure moment, Robbie would get us to the top.
Oh.
And then Mick would be able to talk him through a whole system to get me up there, because I wouldn't be climbing that.
Yeah. You'd also have really, really good social media if Robbie was on your team too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all about the publicity, you know. If you're ever going to get people coming to rescue you, you need to have a social media presence.
Yeah. You'd have really good Instagram stories.
I might rein him in a little bit with the Instagram stories.
Oh.
And I know that, having said that, there are two people possibly listening to this that are massively offended right now that they're not on my list. But the fishwives will remain fishwives in my heart forever.
Okay,
But I wouldn't have them on my zombie apocalypse team.
Actually, I don't know if they'll recover from that, but
I don't think they will. I think there's a lot of people that are feeling a bit shunned right now.
It's a divisive first question, isn't it?
Yeah. To be honest, I might reevaluate that further on in the interview.
You can have some more time to think about it. You can have
Yeah.
if you got some backups you want to put in there. You can
Some
drop them
backup
in.
choices, right? I'll have a think for some backup choices. Oh, there's loads of backup choices.
Anyway, I suppose we should crack on with non-zombie related questions, but
No, I think all the questions in this entire chat should be zombie related.
that's it. We're done. That's the end of the interview. That's the only zombie. Right. So I suppose a slightly more normal podcast question would be: you had quite an interesting upbringing in terms of climbing. I think at least even before I met you, knew of loads of kind of wild stories of the Mackenzies from the north. But could you talk maybe a little bit about that and kind of how you got into climbing and that kind of wild kind of family you have?
Right. So, I was 3 when my dad's been climbing for way before I was born. He's pretty old school. That total self-taught kind of mentality, lots of mistakes, lots of errors, somehow survived through all of them to eventually have me. But I was 3 when he properly got me into it. He made me a harness out of old car seatbelts because he's so cheap he couldn't afford a proper harness. So old car seatbelts would have done. And yeah, took it from there. And back when I was starting out, there wasn't really climbing walls. The climbing wall at Glenmore Lodge was the closest one, and that was miles away. So we spent most of my childhood, trad climbing. There's loads of little great spots around Dingwall, around Inverness where I grew up. Yeah, trad climbing was my thing. And you know yourself, if you go out trad climbing, you get into some crazy adventure sometimes. So yeah, we did some wacky stuff while I was growing up. And then, the wall in Inverness opened up and I, started getting indoor climbing and the competition thing opened up, which I don't know if you've got questions on later, but yeah, definitely had a fair few adventures in the younger years.
would your upbringing have been a lot different if there was like a local wall that was really good? Was that kind of going to trad spots a really big part of your history, or
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I don't think I would have had as much of an appreciation for it um, if I didn't have that upbringing in trad climbing. Like I, when I was, maybe 14, 15, doing competitions, doing loads of indoor climbing for training and everything, I kind of was, I've spoken about this before. I was kind of getting a little bit dull just with the repetitiveness of it. I didn't have the same love for indoor climbing that I did outdoors, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why I was maybe a little bit de-psyched. But having one or two epic outdoor adventures after that kind of made me realise exactly why I liked it. And it was for that, getting out into the outdoors, out into the mountains, having proper adventures, seeing amazing views, seeing your country, climbing on amazing routes. It was that part that I loved, and that's what I grew up with. So I think if I was getting into it now and I was just an indoor climber, I don't think I would maybe have the same connection. I feel like, yeah, I would have missed out on something.
so another question to put you in the spot is if you put yourself in your dad's position. So if you had a family, do you think you go through the same actions your dad did, or was there anything that you thought was maybe a bit too risky, or is there anything? Would you do anything differently to bring up your kids if you ever have them?
Well, I'd buy a harness instead of car seat belts for a start. But no, I don't think. We did some crazy stuff. We did some wacky adventures, and like my dad, when we were growing up, my dad would ask us, me and my little brother, what do you want to do this weekend? And we'd say, oh, we want to go do this, and he would set it up. But I don't think we did anything that was over risky, because, well, he's actually really. I don't want to like big up his ego too much, but he's actually quite skilled in the whole climbing thing. So he can make crazy, wacky ideas come to life in a safe way. And I know a lot of like non-climbers would look at some of the stuff we do and just think that is absolutely mental, and at no point should you be putting a child in that position. But in reality, it was safe the entire time. And I mean, we did some stupid stuff. We did some really stupid stuff. Do you want an example?
Yeah, pick the most ridiculous, stupid thing, and let's hear the story.
Okay, this might not be the most ridiculous, stupid thing, but this is one of the funniest ones. The little village, Evanton, where my dad lives now with my grandfather, my family came from around that area for, a long, long, long time. And there's, up in the woods behind the town, there's a little gorge that's really deep, but actually really skinny. And there's a plaque next to it that details a story of a local man who jumped over the gorge. And that local man is actually a family member of mine. And we looked at the gorge, and it is actually, it's skinny, but it's not skinny enough to jump across. So the story of him jumping across it just seemed absolutely nuts to us, but seeing as it's in our blood, I suppose, we had to try it. So we rigged a top rope, we got the ice axes out, and we spent an afternoon jumping into this gorge, because none of us made it over it. We would run off the edge, jump into the gorge, and try and hook grass and bits of tree roots and stuff with the ice axes on the other side. None of which worked. It did not work in the slightest. But, we were roped up. We were safe. We weren't going to go anywhere. But yeah, I think that is definitely one of the stupidest afternoons we've spent.
That's amazing. But did this like long lost Mackenzie that did the jump? Did he have the benefit of ice axes, or were you guys like dumbing it down a little bit?
Oh no, we totally dumbed it down. He just went for it. Like, the absolute legend that he is, Ab just went for it. And I don't know, there was no details about what part of the gorge he jumped, whether he managed to find a skinnier section than we were trying, but yeah, it's a good effort nonetheless.
Yeah, no top rope as well. I
No
think,
top rope.
if anything, the Mackenzie lineage has got a bit more safe over the years rather than.
Ooh, oofed. Oofed. Dem's fighting words, McBain. Dem's fighting words.
Resorting to top ropes and ice axes. God, what next?
Look, we are the top rope tough guys.
That's quite like something that I kind of picked up on there. Is it's really cool that your dad seems to give you a lot of choice about what you do. It's like it seems like you and your brother guided a lot of the activities you want to do. Like you said, you wanted to go do this, and your dad would just kind of set it up and let you go for it. That's like pretty cool.
It was.
Do you kind of
It was
carry?
really,
Darn you go.
yeah, it was really, really cool. Like, coming up to the weekend, if the weather was good and we were going to go out and do something, he would give us the option. And we wouldn't always choose climbing. Some weekends we wanted to go fishing, but we'd be given the choice, and whatever we came up with, he tried to make happen. We wanted to walk to the top of this hill, we'd go and walk to the top of this hill. We wanted to go climb this route, we went and climbed that route. I remember I think I was only 9. We were going to Skye. We were going to go and sit on the Keok for lunch. That was the plan. But I think in the drive on the way over, I said to my dad, like, I want to lead Arrow Route, which is that epic. It's a V-diff, right?
Oh, and the Keok on Skye.
Yeah, the epic V-diff slab. And yeah, his response was like, yeah, sure, cool, go for it. Like, by that point, I'd done quite a bit of trad leading, so he was quite happy with my skills, I suppose. And yeah, he totally let me lead Arrow Route at age 9, which to this day freaks a lot of climbers out because it's a really exposed, scary slab.
Yeah. When you were like a kid and you asked him stuff like that, were you surprised when he said yes, or were you like, did you just expect him to say, like, what was your kind of? Do you remember back then what it was like, or were you kind of like?
There was definitely a couple of times where I was like, I want to do that, and he'd go, yeah, sure, and I'd be like, really? Oh, okay. Well, now I'm committed. Now I've got to do it.
Is that sort of sorry, on you go.
No. So like that, the first, I think, what I would consider, or what I considered back then anyway, my first like proper hard trad lead was Dracula at Duntelchaig. Classic E3, big steep roof crack. It's just amazing. And from the moment, like, I was like, we've top roped it a bunch of times because it's just a really fun swing if you mess it up. But I was just like, I want to try leading it. And when he said yes, I was like, oh, right, okay, I'm committed now. I've actually got to try it. I think I was on that route for like 45 minutes trying to battle, like, figure my way through the sequence that I knew how to climb. I just couldn't, in the exposure on the sharp end moment, could not remember what I was doing. But man, what a lead that was. That was spectacular.
That's ace. I wonder, like, do you think, I just like talking about risk, do you think your dad was perfect at judging that you probably weren't in that much danger, but like your perception of the risk was quite high, so you almost have like the best of both worlds where you're actually in quite a safe position, but you think you're not, so you're kind of like growing and learning. Was your dad like really good at just judging that sort of on the fly?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it was so much on the fly because, like I said, he was really experienced before I even came along. So when I suggest, can I go and do this route? Arrow route or Dracula are the perfect examples. Like, can I go and lead this route? Like, he's done those routes a bunch of times. He knows that the gear on them is solid. They are safe routes to lead.
Yeah,
you'll be able to get gear, and the falls aren't that bad. But in my really young head,
what age were you as well? This sort of.
So for Arrow route, I think I was only 9.
What about Dracula?
I think I was only 9, and Dracula, I don't know, potentially around the same.
Because that's
maybe
pretty
a little bit older.
Pretty young,
maybe a little bit older. But yeah, like I think in my young head, I was like, oh my god, these are really risky because, well, one, E3 is a hard grade, and Arrow route is just one of the most exposed slabs in ever, but I think he knew that I had done enough to know how to protect myself on these things, and that there was enough protection on these routes that it was that I would have been able to make myself safe. In reality, I did like a 55-foot run out on Arrow Route because I couldn't find any gear, which that was a scary moment. I remember I placed like 2 nuts coming off the little belay ledge, starting on the slab, and just fully committing to climbing for a long time. Then realised that I was way above my gear, and I couldn't find anything apart from this weird flared undercut crack. And I spent ages there trying to ram a cam inside of it, and the cam stayed long enough for me to clip it, and then as soon as I moved, I heard it dinking off down the slab. So yeah, I mean, in reality, whether I did actually protect them well enough is maybe another question. But yeah, no, I think he was quite good at knowing what things were going to be safe enough,
Yeah.
And I don't think I genuinely asked, or me or my little brother asked, to do anything that was just too out there. But yeah, there's definitely a couple of trips where we got, or let's say Dylan didn't seem to get. Oh no, in fact, Dylan did seem to get in some dodgy situations. Dylan was potentially worse than me, but I definitely got myself into some dodgy situations through my own stupid decision making. But yeah, I don't think we did anything that was too risky.
No. And another thing I was thinking was, is that kind of like that risk assessment and that kind of like options of choice your dad gave you something that's been important to you when you've coached kids now and like recently?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've got a huge respect for that amount of choice that I had back then, and I am a firm believer that if you have worked with a kid or a young person and you kind of know what their ability level is, and you give them that little bit of responsibility to step up, they always do. I've never ever had a kid let me down when I've given them that little bit of responsibility. So if one of them asks, "Can I do this?" and I've done my risk assessment and I can see that it's, there is a safe way to do it, then yeah, absolutely, do it within the safe way. And that can be indoor stuff, that can be outdoor stuff. It doesn't really matter. But I think giving a kid that little bit of responsibility and making them aware that they are making quite a serious decision in doing this is a really good life lesson for them. And I've never had anybody let me down. I had a couple of, was it last year? I was at a crag with a couple of young lads that I've known for a long time. I think they're maybe 17, 18. They'd never done a trad lead before, but they top roped that Gobi's roof at
Campus
Baden, the classic E2, and I know that route like inside and out. I know that you use the gold cam in the crack at the bottom, green cam out in the crack at the left, small blue cam in the horizontal crack. You do the hard move, the crux move, and then you get a solid silver cam. I know that route inside and out. And the two of them came down and they said, "Can I lead that? Do you think I could lead that?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I don't see why not. Like, exactly, I've shown you exactly where the gear goes. The gear is unmess-upable. And if you do fall off the crux move, you've got a cam right in front of your face. So the fall isn't big. So, yeah, and the two of them led the route quite happily, and they were both really, really cautious of their gear. They were really careful about how they placed it, how they climbed it. They were checking in with me the whole time. So, yeah, giving people that little bit of responsibility to, yes, you can make a tough decision, a big decision like that. But if you're careful and cautious, then there's no reason why you shouldn't try it, I've potentially shot myself in the foot there. There's going to be a lot of people going, "Oh, that's ridiculous."
I'll never get Robert Mackenzie to coach my kids now. I've heard this. Yeah. I kind of want to get onto your coaching stuff, but maybe for other people it'd be good just to have like a little bit of an outline of like your kind of competition days, because that was kind of a big part of your life. Like maybe just kind of briefly like what that was like and what level you competed at, and that'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, so the climbing wall in Inverness, it kind of all started when the climbing wall in Inverness opened up when I was, I think, 8. I think I was 8 when it opened up, and my dad helped build the wall and then ended up running the place for a long time. So I basically lived at that wall for a long time, and I think one of the things that gave me a huge benefit in being able to climb well was all my days trad climbing, because that just forces technique way better than 10 years of indoor climbing. So yeah, when we started doing comps, when the competition scene kind of opened up and we started running the YCS comps, or the bricks, so it was back then, maybe there wasn't that many people climbing in my category at the time, but yeah, I was actually not too bad. I don't want to big myself up too much, but I won quite a lot of stuff. And yeah, I think I competed in like the bricks and the BLCCs for a couple of years before, when I was, I think, 12, I got the invite to be on the GB team, which, back then it was just the one team. So, I got to go out in all these training sessions with, and like international trips and all these international competitions with some really, really mega strong, really cool people, which, gave me a huge amount of sight, because I was one of those kids that was super competitive. Even if with my friends, I was super competitive. Like I said, like competing with Nick de Boost and Mike Lee and Ben Lister and that up the road, that gave me a lot of fight. And then when I joined the GB squad, I had all these really big, strong guys like Tom Bolger and that. And I was like, right, well, I've got to beat them. They're the next targets, I suppose. But yeah, I did 6 years on the GB squad. And man, I did some cool stuff with them. Some really cool stuff. I went on a lot of amazing trips, lots of competitions, going away to foreign countries for a weekend, not really seeing anything other than the inside of a climbing wall, but meeting the international climbing community was something that I will never ever regret. That was absolutely something that I loved, absolutely loved that.
I'm going to put you in the spot a bit again. Oh, sorry.
Hit me. No, go for it. Put me on the spot.
Just because you mentioned something. So, what is the wildest story you've got from these competition climbing trips?
Oh, right, okay. Right, so the question I'm asking myself in my head is, do I get myself in trouble and be honest? Or do I tell you the least bad stories?
You got to go for the honest.
Go for the honest. Oh, God. I was a terrible member of that squad. I was so badly behaved. I'm not going to lie. I was a nightmare for my team managers. Tony Powell and Ian Dunn will back that up. I nearly got a yellow card on my first ever squad trip to France. We went to Font for like a week. We got the ferry over, and they were giving out free glasses of champagne when you went and got food. So, I thought, well, I'm going to France. They drink wine in France. I will do the done thing, and I'll have a glass of champagne. I then told one of the chaperones, Pete Whitaker's mum, Jill, that I'd had a glass of champagne. And she rightly reminded me that 1, I was 12, and 2, it was a dry team and I should not be drinking alcohol. So yeah, I got myself in trouble on my first ever team trip.
Oh, it's like double reprimanded, underage drinking, and
yeah, man, we did some bad stuff on that team. We did an underwear run around Warsaw. Yeah, we ran about 2 miles in our underwear around the hotel. That was Probably not to be recommended.
There'll be some poor old lady in Warsaw that's been scarred by these like semi-naked GB youth squad members. She'll remember to this day this story of these kids running out of the hotel in their pants.
But I will say, I will back myself up for all the stupid things we did. Sneaking out the hotel late at night and climbing up the walls of the hotels and stuff like that. Like, for all the stupid stuff we did, I was actually kind of responsible. I say kind of responsible. The 2008 Sydney World Cup, there was one day our chaperones, team manager Tony Powell and his wife, they wanted to have a day kind of to themselves, not really looking after us so much. So Tony turned around to me, of all people, probably the least responsible person on that team, and said, "There's the bus into town. Take everyone into town for the day. Be back here at 7:30 for dinner." And my instant reaction was, "Guys, get on the bus before he changes his mind. Let's go." And we had a great day. We messed around in the city centre, but I had everybody on that team back at the hotel by 7:30.
They chose the 12-year-old champagne drinker. What was going through their heads? But I know it comes back to that. Like, you got given a bit of responsibility, and yeah, you didn't mess up, did you?
No. Well, I knew the consequences if I messed up.
Red card.
Yeah, I did actually get a red card from the team at one point.
What was that for? Are you willing to share?
Okay. So I'm gonna say that my red card, I got a few yellow cards on the trip on team trips for stupid things that I did and misbehaviour. But the reason I got a red card was absolutely nothing to do with me. Both of them were a young lad, Pete Johnson, from Glasgow. I hope he listens to this because I'm calling you out. So one trip, he stole one of the team members' room keys and hid in my room, and that team member then kicked down the door to my hotel room, and I got the yellow card because I should have stopped it. I feel like that's unfair. Then on the very next trip, Pete was sitting on the windowsill of our room. The window opened in the way. My bag was on the other side of the window, and I closed the window slightly just to get to my bag, and he thought I was closing the window on him, so he put his arm through the window.
I
got a double yellow. Through 2 panes of glass. I got a double yellow card for that, and that was 3 yellow cards on the record, red card, 6 months suspension. So I'm going to say that was not my fault. I probably deserved it, but it wasn't my fault.
I love it. All these like red cards and yellow cards have nothing to do with anything that goes on in the climbing wall. It's just all this stuff that happened in hotels and.
We were totally focused when it came to the climbing wall side.
Okay, a bit more of a general question then.
Go.
Is there like one overarching kind of life lesson you feel like you learned from your kind of competition days?
Ooh. Yes, big one. So when I started competing on the GB squad, I was doing not too bad. I made a couple of finals in Europeans, and I made semis a couple of times in World Cups and stuff. And then after a couple of years, maybe I was 15 maybe. Like I said, I've spoken about this before, but I got quite de-psyched. My performances in comps went downhill. I wasn't making finals. I wasn't making semis. I just wasn't doing too well, and I couldn't quite work out why I was de-psyched. But that was then coming home with me, and I was de-psyched in training, and I just wasn't enjoying it. To be honest, I almost gave up climbing completely because I just really wasn't enjoying it for a little bit there. And then we did that. We went and did a winter climbing day up in Coddingsnecta up in Cairngorms. We did soloed Pygmy Ridge, and there was a moment where I was sitting on a little skinny ledge, absolutely freezing, but I looked out at the view and what I was doing, and it all came home to me exactly why I loved climbing. And it was the realization that I am focusing too much on placing myself against others and performing rather than just enjoying what I'm doing. Because I got into climbing because I absolutely loved the climbing. The climbing was the most important part. The movement side, the enjoyment, the exposure, that was what was important to me. And over the last couple of years, I'd maybe lost a little bit of that. I was focusing more on just the performance and where I placed compared to other people, which it dawned on me that does not matter to me. It does not matter to me. And after that, when I went back to competitions and my placing started getting better and I was climbing better and I was having more fun because I wasn't taking it so seriously. So yeah, I think the biggest life lesson that I got through that was that for me anyway, the competitive side, I absolutely loved competitions, but not because of competing against other people or my performance. It was about the enjoyment of climbing. And a lot of that comes from the community, meeting all these crazy, wacky climbers from around the world. But going to a competition, you've got routes that are set by some of the best route setters in the world, and they're always just spectacular things to climb. They're so much fun. Yeah, and for a moment there, I was missing all that because I was focusing on the wrong things.
See, that brings me on to the quite well. This is like a bit of a philosophical question, but interested to hear your take.
Hit me.
Do you reckon climbing competitions, are they valuable in the fact they teach kids about failure, or do you think there's a negative aspect where maybe they encourage harmful comparison to others, kind of like you were just talking about there?
Whew, yeah, like it is subjective. I was able to make that realization, but there have been so many kids that I've seen from my days, from now, who aren't able to make that realization before they just hate climbing. And climbing does teach, like competitive climbing does teach an amazing resilience to failure and personal a drive for personal progression and an enjoyment in pushing yourself beyond where you thought you could. It does teach that, and those are valuable life lessons that go into a lot of things. You know, being able to push yourself further and push yourself harder and deal with when things don't work out. Learn lessons from that. They are hugely valuable life lessons. But if you're not able to deal with the failures and remember why you're enjoying it, if it always just comes down to a negative thing for you, if you always walk away with a negative thing, that is a really unhealthy thing to have. And a lot of kids they don't quite make that realization before they drop out. And you know, I am a firm believer that kids make that realization themselves if you give them the space to do so. They will realize why they enjoy competitions, what part of the competitions that they enjoy, if you give them the space to do so. Whereas, you know, what you see in most, well, not to say most, but a lot of other sports is the highly competitive, highly pushy coaching, parenting, you know, or external feedback from other competitors. You know, that highly pushy nature is something that drives a lot of negativity, and I see it a lot coming in now into climbing, quite a lot of the pushiness, you know, from coaches, from parents, where they're pushing the kids to be better and perform better, because yes, they have the capability to have a better performance on the day or whatever, but pushing to perform better than other people instead of just enjoying what you're doing. In doing that, you take away the ability for the kids to make the choice of why they enjoy competitions. You if you're constantly pushing them to perform better, they only see climbing and competitions as I must perform better, rather than, oh, that was a really fun route, or I met this person today, they climbed better than me, but it doesn't really matter because they're really cool and I'm going to go hang out with them this weekend. Yeah, that's the only side of competitions that I see as being really negative.
Why do you think that parents and coaches kind of fall into that pushy trap? Like, what? Because I suppose that's a really common. Like, you hear that in loads of sports and loads of activities and loads, even to do with academia and kids in school. Like, that's like quite common.
Yeah.
But like, what is it you think makes parents and maybe coaches fall into that kind of performance orientated kind of trap?
So I think there's a lot of things that go into it. From the coach's side, that's their job. They have an external pressure to get the results because they're being paid to get the results. And I mean that can cloud a lot of things for a professional when you've been given a task and you have to meet that task. And if you see one of your competitors who just isn't having a very good day, or isn't psyched and isn't trying that hard, or doesn't really care, that can be a big pressure for a coach, because it's not then a reflection of their work. It's just down to the kid. But at the end of the day, it's the child's choice whether they perform or not. It's not a coach's thing. But I think from a coach's perspective, it is a little bit of the professional pressure of, I'm being paid to get results. I need to get results. I think what we see a lot now with parents who, and like, let's not lump everybody together. Absolutely not every parent is the same. Definitely not. But there are one or two who are really pushy with things. And I think what I've noticed is that it's families that have come from a completely non-climbing background, who are maybe coming from a different sport that has that really pushy, really competitive nature around it, and introducing the same attitudes and the same pressures into climbing competitions, which climbing competitions have never really been that, so it feels a bit odd, feels a bit awkward to me, and I really don't like it, because I just see the negative sides of being that way. But I think it's maybe that attitude's coming from external other sports and coming into climbing. Then you've got maybe your classic people trying to relive their dreams through their kids kind of thing, but that's a whole level of psychology that I'm not going to get into.
We're not qualified to talk about that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But I'm going to say that the majority of people out there are not like that. I've maybe seen one or two in the last few years that I really didn't like the attitudes of, or whatever. But the majority of people out there are the same as the rest of the climbing community. They're super chilled about everything. I think the kids put a lot of pressure on themselves because maybe they think their coaches want them to do better, or their parents want them to do better. But like I said, if you give them the space to learn why they enjoy comps, then they will make that lesson. I think one of the bigger ones is potentially the social media side. Okay. Social media side of looking on Instagram and seeing how this person's performing or whatever, and thinking, I need to be there. I'm just as good as this person. I need to try harder. Or there are young people who are battling to try and get sponsorships, so they need to be the tippy top of the scale to be able to get a sponsorship. And I think that's a really negative thing. Using social media to compare yourself and your performance to the rest of the world, for most people is always just a negative thing, because they never feel like they're achieving that same goal. I think the whole striving to be sponsored thing can be really negative for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even those that are already sponsored, they've got the pressure that they need to maintain their level, their performance, to stay sponsored. But in saying that, I've noticed in the last wee while, the last couple of years, sponsors are not sponsoring just the best anymore. They're sponsoring people that are inspirational rather than just the best, and they're not dropping people because their performance drops or anything like that. So they're definitely sponsoring just inspirational people now, which gives a lot of scope for people to be a little bit more relaxed about their performance, I suppose.
Yeah. Social media can be like a dangerous thing though, because the one thing that it kind of puts everything through this like lens of success. Like people are always going to post about good things that are happening to them, and then maybe kind of filter out the bad things. But then what happens is everyone looks like they're just having a great time and climbing really hard and smashing their projects or whatever, and you don't often hear as much about people struggling and having a hard time. But do you find is there a positive way you can use social media, or do you think is it mainly more negative, or?
Yeah, there is positive ways to use social media as long as what you're putting out there is honest about what you're actually doing. If you're only ever posting the good stuff, then that's all people see, and if those people are out there comparing themselves to you, then it's mostly going to be negative for them. Whereas if you're kind of open and say, today I actually had a really bad day. I didn't climb well at all. It's more relatable for everybody, and it makes people a little bit more comfortable. But I think social media is an amazing thing for bringing people together and building a community and sharing ideas and making plans and building friendships. It is a thing that binds the community quite a lot more. So I think social media is a really good thing for that, but it is definitely a huge negative for comparing each other, or comparing your performance to other people.
Oh, that was a pretty deep chat.
That was super deep.
Yeah.
That was super, super deep.
I don't know if I've got any psychology. I need something. I'm going to have to come up with a more light-hearted question to kind of like bring the tone back up. So, I'm going to put you in the spot again a little bit.
Oh, here we go.
You've got a gun to your head.
Hit me.
You can only do one of these things the rest of your life and not the other one. Personal climbing or coaching other climbers.
Ooh.
And why? Sorry, yeah, you need to say why.
Okay, as part of my coaching, am I allowed to climb things to demonstrate, or am I strictly no climbing?
Total minimal amount of climbing when you're coaching.
Whoa. Oh, Calum. Oh, Calum, you've got me, man. Calum, what are you doing? I don't know.
I found this question tough, but I think I ended up falling down on one side pretty hard. I kind of justified it pretty strongly.
I'm going to say coaching.
Oh.
Yeah,
I did not say coaching, so that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to say coaching. My justification is like I get a huge amount of satisfaction and enjoyment with teaching other people, and that could be at absolutely any level, whether it's performance coaching or intro sessions or teaching someone how to tie a figure of eight. I really, really enjoy doing that, because for me, climbing is the community. For me, like, I could be quite happy being part of the community and not climbing, rather than climbing and not being part of the community. Definitely. Yeah, I 100% back up my suggestion. Like, I would be quite happy just teaching and coaching people and being part of the community and giving what I can give and seeing other people progress and enjoy climbing and not climb myself. Because I think I would miss, if I was just climbing myself personally, I'd get a lot of stuff done, but I would miss being part of that growth.
I think we found the first ever true act of altruism in this podcast.
I mean, it's not altruism because it's for my own self-indulgence.
Ah, true. Yeah, you've always got that comeback. No, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I feel like a total like selfish person now because I was like totally. I was thinking about that question. I was like, I definitely just climbing.
What was your justification?
Well, to be fair, my justification was that if I think back to all the times where I've really enjoyed coaching and felt like I made a big impact, it's when I've at that time been doing a lot of personal climbing and personally been really psyched. And I think my motivation for coaching comes from my own drive for climbing. And I feel like I couldn't coach if I didn't have that drive, that personal drive for climbing. It would almost be a bit hollow me coaching if I didn't climb as well. So
Yeah.
I kind of ended up just being like, nah, I need to just climb. I don't think I could coach very well if I didn't climb personally. I guess that's a bit of a two-faced answer though. It's not really coming down on the selfish side. It's saying that I couldn't do option 2 without doing
Yeah.
both of them.
Like you couldn't do option 2 just coaching for the rest of your life with all of your heart if your heart wasn't in it. And you need the climbing side to. And like I agree with that. That's why that's a stupid question, and you should never have asked that because that put me on the spot and I didn't like it.
Next question. I think this is like not lighthearted, not too heavy. Should be just about good.
Just about right. Is this like the Goldilocks question?
Yeah, it's like the not too hot, not too cold, just right. If you had to pick 3 people from your life that have influenced your climbing, who are they and why?
Oh, I like this question. I like this question a lot. I actually think about this very question a lot. Is this coming from the theory that there are 3 people in your life that you can always attribute your personality and the beliefs that you have to 3 people? That 3 people might change, but there's always 3 top people.
Oh, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so that is a genuine. How have you not heard that? It's a philosophical thing.
Psychology, mate. Psychology.
Yeah, so there's 3 people in your life that you can always attribute your beliefs and the way you are to, and that 3 people may change, but there's a top 3 people. So number 1 will always be my dad because he's the silly man that got me into climbing in the first place, for better or worse.
Cool.
I'm going to say Al Halewood because he has done all of the training I've ever done, apart from my Fundas 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that make you are you like a mini Al Halewood in terms of your instructing?
I mean, I'll leave him to make that decision. Definitely not. You cannot compare me and Halewood. Jeez. I've got a long way to go before I can even step in a toe of those shoes. But yeah, Al's done all of the qualifications that I've ever done. So all of my qualification coaching knowledge has come from him, to be honest. And any of the work that I've done, if I'm building up to something or anything, he's the kind of benchmark for what I test myself against. How does an Al session run? How does my session run? And person number 3. Person number 3 changes a lot. Person number 3 changes a lot. So it used to be Michael Jeans.
I thought you were going to say that. I don't know why.
So it used to be Michael Jeans, and purely because Jeans made a decision a while back that made me kind of wake up. So when I was, when Jeans was at GCC, he was head coach, head route setter. I was one of his setters, one of his coaches, and I was possibly the least organised, least reliable person on his coaching staff. I was a nightmare because it's a typical student, just not really being all with it. But I'd been there for a while, and she's not going to like me saying this, but Christy McLeod then came on to be one of the coaches, and me and Christy took on that team. But when Jeans was originally leaving for his role at ClimbScotland, he asked Christy to head the team, and I don't know why, but I'd always thought that I would have liked to have done it, and not even being considered, not even being asked, I was like, what's that all about? Hang on. And I had a look at myself and was like, oh, actually, I understand exactly why he wouldn't choose me, because I am a horrible person to work with. Horrendously unorganised and unreliable. Yeah, I completely get that. So I asked him, and he said that it wasn't anything to do with that at all. But yeah, I think just that moment of realisation in my own head that I am not as good at this as I possibly could be made me tighten things up quite a lot. So I think just that one little thing that had absolutely nothing to do with me at all made me wake up a little bit. But I think, honestly, it has changed since then. I've got a friend, Jenna Hunter, who, when I was swithering over whether to take the ClimbScotland job or even apply for the ClimbScotland job, I was really happy at GCC. I didn't really want to leave. I loved my team. I loved my little squad. I loved the work that I did, all the coaching that I did. So thinking about applying for another job and going somewhere else for something different was a scary decision. And I was speaking to her one night. She's one of my best friends. And I was explaining to her that I don't make big decisions like this, ever. I just float through life. And she turned around with the most cheesy line I've ever heard. Don't float, soar. And I think that was like, in my head, was like, yeah, why don't hold myself back? I might as well try for something bigger than this. So that was the decision of joining ClimbScotland right then and there, with the cheesiest line ever. But yeah, I don't think I might not be where I am sitting talking to you making this podcast if it wasn't for that stupidly cheesy line from Jenna.
Can we just rewind to the fact that you are a self-described floater?
Yes, I am a floater.
I've never heard a truer word spoken about Robert Mackenzie.
Thanks.
No, it's funny, like, you with Jeans and with Jenna, it's funny how, like, sometimes such a small phrase or a small comment or a small word can have this sort of profound impact. Yep. Like, it's just, I bet when you're on your deathbed and you cycle through all the moments in your life, it's those like little moments you think about.
Yep.
That's super interesting.
And like, Jeans won't have any idea about that at all. Like, he won't know that. That his decision to do that had nothing to do with me whatsoever, but it had a huge impact on me.
Yeah. But that's the power, because you never know when you say something to someone, it might do the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're never sure when you're being like that spark for someone else. That's kind of what makes it super mysterious, I guess.
Yeah. Hell, we might have already had that moment for a few people. In fact, I can think of one moment where I hope I have. I was at Ratho one day and there was a song on and I was dancing away to myself. Nobody around me, I was just dancing. And this little kid came up and he was like, "You're weird." I was like, "Yeah, I know I'm weird." And he was like, "You're okay with being weird?" I was like, "Yeah, because if you're weird, you're never bored." And like, honestly, I saw the light bulb in his head go bing. Like, oh yeah, if you're a bit odd, you can always entertain yourself.
So we need to have a look around Ratho for a kid that's just like dancing by himself.
Yeah.
And we can find what the spark did.
I've never seen that kid since.
I suppose to round up, because we're almost like about an hour.
Yep.
Last one I wanted to touch on was, I think, I don't know if you agree with this, but I think you're a bit of a no, not a self-described, I think you're a bit of a couch crusher.
Whoa. Careful what you're saying here. Are you
I don't
calling
know,
me fat?
I reckon...
Whoa, saying that I crush couches? That's really harsh, dude. Come on, man.
too far out there for the Climb Scotland podcast.
I know my nickname's
Just the
Tubbs and all that, but it's not that bad.
No, but like, I suppose thinking back to your setting days, like, kind of one of your top attributes was that you didn't seem to climb for long periods of time, yet you suddenly came back very quickly and crushed pretty hard routes. So if you could summarize really concisely, what's like the key tip to being a couch crusher?
Trad climbing. No, I kid you not, absolutely trad climbing. So you go climbing on a climbing wall. You just the nature of climbing walls, it's really easy to just thug your way up stuff without climbing really well, and that gets you so far. The strength part of it gets you a long way, but it takes a long time to build the technique to go along with that. And if you stop climbing for any period of time, you lose all that strength, and it's really hard to. It's easy to get strength back, but it's really hard to get yourself back up to that same level. Without injury. Whereas trad climbing, if you're going out trad climbing, strength is not the thing that gets you up things. It is technique. It is knowing how to rest, how to stop and get yourself into a comfortable position to place gear, to chill out. And you might be on the wall for 45 minutes, an hour. So you've got the endurance and the technique side ticked. And if you stop climbing for a little bit, your strength might go down, your endurance might go down a little bit, but you never lose that technique. That is one thing that has never, ever failed me. And yeah, I went through a few years of really not climbing that much, to be honest, just because I was a lazy git. But when I came back, I hadn't lost that technique at all. I felt really weak and I felt really heavy, but I hadn't lost that technique, and I could still climb reasonably hard. I don't think I've ever dropped below 7B. Which I'm taking as a huge win. And yeah, I attribute all of that to just having a base for climbing built out of trad climbing. Technique is the thing that got me through everything. I was never that strong, to be fair. It was all just technique.